and I'm looking forward to spending a little time with you soon. So
Thank
welcome.
you very much. Thank you very much.
So it is my pleasure, and Russ might counter that, but it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Russ Cashin, who is the director of the entity known as FERC at UW-Whitewater. FERC stands for Fiscal and Economic Research Center. And we've been working with Russ and his team for a number of months on putting together a housing study for Jefferson County and for the communities in Jefferson County. This was in compliance with some of the work that we did as Jefferson County government for our strategic plan. So understanding our housing needs based on a variety of different indicators is what Russ is going to talk about this morning. So with that, I will introduce Russ and his assistant, Clayton.
Good morning. Yeah.
You might want to take that mask off.
That's okay.
Russ, I don't know if you're going to be muffled with.
I'm going to eventually take it off.
Okay.
I have to show the Whitewater logo. It's a mandate.
Yep,
well, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're fine on our end in terms of audio. Please proceed.
Okay. Oh, so they're not physically going to be able to see me?
I'm not sure if
I would have came in that sweatshirt.
Just hold on. Something's going on with your presentation, even though we had it up a minute ago.
I could have worn my sweatshirt.
There it is. It's up.
Okay.
There we are. We're up.
Okay. I want to, my name is Russ Cashin. I'm the director of the Fiscal and Economic Research Center at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where I'm also a professor of economics. I want to start out, we have a lot of numbers here, and numbers are important. That's why one of the reasons I got a PhD in economics was I'm a numbers person. The challenge is that numbers often obscure facts. We love numbers, and that honestly, I live and die numbers every day of my life. But we need to address the. I'm having movement all around me. This is fun. We need to address issues first of all. And Cameron. I'm looking up at the board here, by the way, and I know about half of these people. I've had interactions with about half of them. Cameron is Whitewater. He's Whitewater purple all the way. And so I saw his name up there. Clayton Gallman is one of my students. He's 20 years old. He's going to be a senior in economics. He's going to go to grad school because I'm going to push him there. And he did the analysis, and he's going to talk about the numbers. But what I want to talk about initially is why this is important. Why looking at affordable housing, demand for housing, price of housing, number of units is important. And it's important not simply because we're concerned about numbers, but we're concerned about people. And I'm going to start with in 1971 when I was 11 years old, and everyone's at home doing the math now saying, well, that'll make them 60. Yes, that makes me 60. When I was 11 years old, my family was extremely poor. There were 6 of us, and we got evicted from our house, and we were living in a motel in Cudahy, Wisconsin. The 6 of us and my mother, and it was bad. I mean, we were considered poor. We're going to get to the concept called ALICE. And ALICE is people who are above the poverty level, but are working poor. My family was, honest to God, poor. And we were living in a mobile home, and it was a struggle. And I was 11 years old, and I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And within the next 2 years, we kind of reassembled, and we moved into a house, which we were able to buy, and it was $23,000. And my mother was a waitress in a diner, working split shifts, trying to make it. My father had a very small construction company, and he struggled. And we moved into this house, and we were working poor. We were the Alice family. We had trouble. There were points in time when the decision had to be, do you buy food or do you pay the rent? Do you buy clothes or do you buy gas for the car? And these are the decisions that are made when housing prices exceed the earnings of working people. And it was a big struggle. And we all worked and we all contributed. We bought a house. There was 8 of us at that point, and we bought a 2-bedroom house in South Milwaukee. And my parents got 1 bedroom. My sisters got the other bedroom. And me and my 3 brothers went up in the attic, which had no heat. It had a particle board floor. We had insulation, but we took A&P shopping bags and stapled them to the wall to hold the insulation in. And so you had these brown shopping bags surrounding this particle board floor with these navy slingback canvas army cots that we slept on. And it was, I mean, I didn't know. To me, it was a little slice of heaven compared to the motel. But my parents struggled, and we all had to get jobs, and we all had to give money to my mother, and my mother would then give us our allowance from the money we gave her. And that's how we lived. And the house was 23,000, and it was honestly the cheapest house in the city. That probably, I mean, if there was a $22,000 house, I'd hate to see that. So then we basically, when I was a senior in high school, I was president of my class. I was on the football team, and the cheerleaders for homecoming came and decorated your rooms. And I come home, and my mom's there, and she said, "The cheerleaders are here, and they decorated your room." And I was like, "Oh my God, you let them in my room?" And I went up there, and I'm not going to cry, by the way. I just have, it's from wearing masks all the time. I go up there, and they had taped little rockets and football helmets on the A&P shopping bags. And one of them had drawn with crayon a mural on the wall. And I go to, I'm like, you let them see how we live? And I go to school the next day, and the cheerleaders came over and they were crying. And they were like, "We didn't know you lived like this." And I was like, why would I tell you? Why would I even let on to this, that we lived like that? We were the working poor. And what we don't realize is in Jefferson County, there's thousands of people in that situation. And we go to school with them, and we go to church with them, and we don't know who they are. Because why would I tell you who I am? We struggle to get along. We made choices. I will finish with, I always remember in 1976, our oven broke. And I remember Thanksgiving, we have pictures of my sister out at the Weber Grill making turkey in like November of 1975 or 76, because we didn't have an oven. And my sister's out there in a coat with oven mitts, keeping her hands warm, because we had to make a choice. Do we pay the mortgage or do we buy an oven? And my father said, if we get foreclosed on, what are we going to do with the oven anyhow? Take it with us back to the motel. And so I think it's important that we recognize that there's numbers and there are people, and these intersect. And we can't obscure ourselves with the fact that there are thousands and thousands of people who we go to church with, we go to school with, we pass in the grocery store, who are making these choices every day. And there's a reason that these choices are getting harder and harder throughout the United States, but in particular in Jefferson County. And I ask Clayton to come up and start explaining some of the numbers. Clayton, come on up.
So hello, my name is Clayton Gallman. I'm a junior, as Russ alluded to, at University of Whitewater studying economics. And I was one of the researchers working on the Jefferson Housing Project. So let's just get started with some of the metrics we used. So our motive with this project was to try and identify the housing supply and demand in Jefferson County. And we're looking at, what are recent housing sale trends? What is recent development patterns looking like? And can the households in Jefferson County actually afford the housing that's available to them? So some of the things we're looking at is the month's inventory of housing in the county, home price appreciation, and we're also focusing on, right, like I said, the affordability of housing and how that relates both to the county and to the municipality level. So when we're looking at the municipalities, they are they really reflect what's going on in the county as well. Although there is some unique trends across municipalities because each municipality is unique in itself. And so some of the metrics that were used to look at and analyze the different municipalities, we've got the month's inventory, and this is a metric that's just measuring the current supply of homes in the market. How long would that supply last if no new homes were introduced to the market? So say there's like 100 homes for sale currently in a market, and the demand is 25 homes selling each month. Well, the current month's inventory would be 4. It would be 4 months, and the current supply of homes in the market would be depleted. In a balanced market, we see 6 months of inventory is about what's, in a balanced market when we see a balance between supply and demand for housing. So in Jefferson County, what we're really seeing is we're seeing these low months inventory, suggesting that the current supply of homes is lacking and that demand is outpacing supply. And you'll see that trend across the different municipalities as well. Another metric we looked at was the price appreciation, especially over like the last 5 years. We said, well, what's the average price appreciation of homes that are actually being sold in the market? So we looked at the median home price and how that changed year to year for single family homes. And we looked at actual home sales. So when a deed is transferred, it gets recorded by the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. And so we looked for all of the arm's length transactions in the housing market that we were focusing on and measured the price appreciation from year to year. We also analyzed what's known as ALICE data. And this is data that, and ALICE it stands for asset limited, income constrained employed households. And basically, like Russ was alluding to, this is a figure that was created by United for ALICE to measure households that are above the poverty line, but are still struggling to make ends meet. It's the working poor, as Russ was saying. And we're seeing that this number has been growing in the county and also in the municipalities, this number of households who are considered ALICE. And it definitely can pose a challenge for finding adequate housing for these families and ensuring that the county and the different municipalities have available housing that is adequate to meet the demand that's actually in Jefferson County is very important. So another thing we're going to look at is where we're going to go forward from here. So what's the demand, what's the supply going to look like in 10 years from now? So by 2030, how many households are going to grow in Jefferson County? What's the household population going to look like? And then on the other side, what new supply are we seeing? Are we seeing new homes being developed? And will those new homes actually meet the growth we see in households? So what I did is I went through for 10 of the municipalities in Jefferson County, and I used these different metrics to kind of get a sense of where the different municipalities stand in Jefferson County. I also use many other metrics, which are also included in the report, but these are like the big highlights that I have. So
Next slide.
Yes.
Yeah, next slide. So we went right to City of Fort.
Yeah, so this is going to be just an overview of what we saw in the different municipalities. So here's Fort Atkinson and the city of Jefferson. And as you can see, we have months inventory that is very low in both of these cities. Again, 6 months is considered the threshold of a balanced market for supply and demand. So we're seeing that there's a very low supply of current homes on the market and that current demand is outpacing supply in both these markets. We also see price appreciation on average has been about 0.47 in Fort Atkinson and 0.28 in Jefferson, so very comparable. And this has been one of the things in Jefferson County as a whole and in each of the municipalities is we're seeing a high trend of price appreciation, especially over the last 5 years. And a lot of reason for this is because we see this low months inventory, right? We see this low supply of houses in the market. So the price of homes just has been increasing year over year. And then our next metric is again the ALICE threshold. So the number, it's the percentage of households in the municipality that are under the ALICE threshold. So these are the percentage of households that is going to need that more affordable housing to meet their housing demands, their income level. And what we're seeing is high percentages of the number of households under the ALICE threshold. So just to give it an idea of what we're saying with the ALICE threshold, for an example, with 2 children, working parents, 2 children who go to school, their median income would have to at least be $54,000 annually to meet the costs of all the necessities that are needed to live in Jefferson County, including housing. And so if we see that someone's income is below this 54,000 threshold, they're going to struggle to either afford housing or other necessities. As Russ was mentioning, you're going to have to choose either to pay the rent or to pay for food or clothes. So what ALICE did is it gave us a number for the what is the market price for housing for a 2-bedroom apartment in Jefferson County. And that price is $822. So that's the amount that ALICE allocated to each household to spend on housing each month. That household will be able to afford a mortgage on about $125,000 home. And so if there is not enough homes in the municipality to meet that, that level of housing that ALICE can afford, that's something that the municipality needs to focus on and work at building towards. So when we see these high levels of households under the ALICE threshold, we need to understand that the housing that they need might not be available to them in the municipality.
And,
So,
and in the report,
yeah, go for it.
go ahead.
Yeah, we're in a trade-off. Clayton is obviously, when I was 20 years old, I could not do this, by the way. And I would expect no one in this room could have. But Clayton, we need to move fast. The point is, if you, and you can see Fort Atkinson, we're gonna go, let's take a flip to Lake Mills and Waterloo, because I'm sure the mayors are saying, where's my city? And what happens is if you don't build enough houses, the demand, because you can see with Lake Mills, that we're going to have 324 more households by 2030, according to the Department of Administration. And of course, they'll be wrong because it may be 300, it may be 290, it may be 400, but they come up with a number and I rely on them. And if we only build 160 houses, but that's what Vanderwall projects, then we're going to have a shortage. For those of you who suffered through microeconomics with me, you know that when demand exceeds supply, price will go up. And what will happen is more people will then fall below that $125,000, $130,000 house threshold. And it'll exacerbate the ALICE problem. So as we don't build enough units, and units may be apartments, it may be condos, it may be mobile homes, it may be houses. But as we don't build enough of them and the population grows, we come into a bigger and bigger ALICE problem. And ALICE, by the way, underestimates the problem a little bit because it doesn't take into account people who are poor. It is about the working poor. It is about people above the threshold for poverty, but below affordability. So we basically added those people back in, the poor, because ALICE is being nice. And one of the reasons they're being nice is because there are many government programs for the poor. It is the working poor. There are programs, and they do exist. And in the case of the elderly, my father who has no money, is in a housing unit. My brothers and sisters, we help him, but because his entire income is limited to Social Security, his rent is a portion of that Social Security, and the government pays the difference. He qualifies as poor, and so we look at Alice because it is truly the working poor, and we can see in each of these communities the estimates for the build out is far under that of the estimates for population growth, which can only lead to price increase because those people with more money will outbid those people with less money. And the challenge is, and we know this, and we're as administrators and as researchers, it is very difficult to come up with a housing unit of $130,000. And we know that. I mean, I've been talking to builders for several years about this, and simply the price of lumber, if you didn't even have to find a lot, you couldn't build it. I mean, I don't even know how you'd have to put it on water, but then water costs money. So we have a serious challenge on our hands. I thank goodness I'm not a policy person. I'm an analyst. I give you numbers. Hopefully you come up with solutions. Do we have questions out there, by the way? I'm going to stop for a second because I have 30 people who actually know what they're talking about. If they have some questions, I want them to chime in. Yes, sir.
So as we focus on the data and the trends with just a simple supply and demand within the county, and I don't think you guys got to this point, but just kind of curious your opinion when we start, especially looking to the east and the west and the pressure points in those more populated counties with their also increasing demand and appreciation of values. How is that maybe potentially built into some of the challenges we may have as we look at our housing environment and inventory?
Well, I'll give you kind of an east-west scenario. East, you have Elmira. West, you have Cambridge. Two totally different communities. Palmyra, and reviewing their comprehensive plan by Vanderwall, an excellent company, by the way, who I applied with and they didn't hire me. Excellent. They do great work. They're kind of at build out. There's not a lot of area in there to build out. And so you have to have communities in which there's options to build. And so each community has its own unique characteristics. In one of the challenges is we sit here looking at things with satellite photos saying, well, in Fort Atkinson, we could build over here. Well, the reality is that's a swamp. I mean, to be honest, it's about boots on the ground and customized approaches for each community that reflect the terrain and also the access to transportation. That Cambridge is in a unique situation being right on the footsteps and the backyard of Madison, Wisconsin. Palmyra is in a different situation, which is that's how I get home because I live in Muskego and I drive through Palmyra on the way back up through Waukesha. So each of these communities has a unique problem. They each have a unique solution. But it comes back to affordable housing and it comes back to workforce housing. This isn't affordable housing in the sense of when I got my graduate degree at Cleveland State University, we did work at the public projects called King Kennedy, which was something else. This isn't about affordable housing in that sense. It's about affordable working housing that may have to reflect, by the way, considerations of zoning, considerations of fees, considerations of transaction costs, time to develop. How do we assist developers to make the process less costly because it can get cumbersome, and cumbersome translates into dollars. Dollars translates into cost for the customer or the homeowners or the renters. When we say $130,000, by the way, that translates into rent because it's simply the cost of a house. The cost of an apartment is simply the kind of the inverse capitalization of the cost of a house. I'm going to buy it and I'm going to rent it to you. I know what I paid for it and I know what I'm going to get. So these are similar numbers. Yes, ma'am.
So In the full report, which is still in its draft form, but will be available to all of you on the call. To Russ's point, when he talked about the differences between Cambridge and Palmyra, just out of the report itself, when we start talking about affordability, the median household income level in Palmyra is 52,426, and the median household income level in Cambridge is 78,821. So that, those are really
But-
important data points as you start looking at how do we build to meet the demand of the future.
And also the way Alice, or even the federal government standards for, 30% is the federal government standard. You shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on housing. Even that standard, these standards calibrate themselves up if you're living in Cambridge. Because when the housing is more expensive, you're spending 30% of that. When it's less expensive, you're still spending 30% of that. And so the numbers move together.
Exactly.
And so it's not like if you go, I mean, obviously, if you're in River Hills, Wisconsin, I don't think we have a big problem up there with affordable housing. I can't afford it. That's the problem. But I think but in most cities, we have affordable housing problems. And it swings back every time. And your eyes should move to those middle lines, which say projected new housing, Palmyra, 3, projected new households, 48. What's going to happen is those 48 are going to fight over the 3. And the 3 wealthy of the 48 are going to get the housing, and the other 45 are going to be challenged. Yes, ma'am.
So is that actually Cambridge's data or is it Sullivan's data?
That might be. That might be. We put in an error so that people are paying attention.
Okay.
You know,
All right. So the other slide is actually where
that's
it
probably
says-
Sullivan.
that's probably Sullivan.
That's probably
Okay.
Sullivan.
I was gonna say
We were getting a little punchy last night. We were, and so let's see what the next slide is. Jefferson County.
household.
And by the way, all of these counties, cities, we had projections back in 2000. We had projections in 2010 by the DOA, and they were all over. They over projected. Let's be frank. And then we had projections from Vanderwall as the number of units that were going to be built, but they were pretty darn close. To be honest, they over projected, but most of these projections didn't take into account the housing bubble. And so we have to cut people some slack in saying that, look, who would have expected that when I made my projections in 2009? And so the rebound didn't start until 14 and 15, and it's been going strong since. So I think the projections on the build out is pretty close. It's still a little over. And by the way, over is sad because over says it's not 15, it's probably 12. The problem is probably worse than we think. Now, the population growth may be a little lower, but they're moving hand in hand. Jefferson County, I'm going to move my mic. And we can see it's grown slower. This is households has grown slower than projected. We had, what's this? Come on up here. Wait, your turn.
Yeah, so as Russ was alluding to, households have definitely grown slower in Jefferson County than what was projected by the Department of Administration. And so what this slide kind of shows is I went and created a couple projections based on what the trends that we're currently seeing in households over the past 10 years. And I kind of projected those out another 10 years to get an idea of what we might actually look at for future housing demand. So these are just the tables with the different households. So for example, at the very bottom, the Department of Administration predicted that there'd be 3,414 households by 2030, the increase from 2020 to 2030. And our most conservative estimate, which is like about a 5.6% growth rate year over year, is going to be the American Community Survey 10-year average growth, which just looks at the last 10 years estimates of household growth in Jefferson County and just extends that out another 10 years to 2030. And so coupled with this, we also see very low construction rates, as Russ was mentioning. We've seen that building permits in Jefferson County have declined considerably since the Great Recession, along with plats and the lots created by plats. There has been some pickup, as Russ was mentioning, by 2015 it has increased a little bit, but the drop off is, yeah, it's pretty insane. So back to the municipalities, we're talking about months inventory. Again, we also see very low months inventory in the county level, and it's been trending downwards. So back in 2016, the housing market still had a decent supply of months inventory, right? It was above that 6-month threshold. That's a little over 7 months. So the balance between supply and demand was being met. But by 2020, the number of homes in Jefferson for sale declined to such a level that the month's inventory is now just under 2 months. And as you can see, the number of homes sold each year has remained about constant. So demand hasn't really fluctuated much, which holds true with the number, the low increase in households that we're seeing. But the number of homes that are available for sale has declined year over year. And here's that trend downwards of the month's inventory. And then, so the month's inventory, it really gets to this other picture, right? Where we see this low inventory. So we're seeing a lot of price appreciation. As Russ was mentioning, homes are going to be bidding the price, or households will be bidding the price of homes upward to, secure that housing, because there is this lack of housing available for sale in the market. And Jefferson County, this is Jefferson compared to Wisconsin. Jefferson County homes have appreciated at a slightly faster rate than the state of Wisconsin as a whole. And so our results really suggest that there's a declining availability of for sale homes, and that the continuing population growth, low development is all leading to a worsening housing shortage in Jefferson County. So now we're going to ask the question, so what kind of homes are really being affected by this housing shortage? What kind of households? And we see this decreasing housing affordability, shortage of housing that leads to less affordability, as we mentioned, and this lower income that households. So the price appreciation of homes in Jefferson County has really outpaced the appreciation of the median income in Jefferson County, which is leading to these challenges that we're seeing of supplying housing to the households in Jefferson County. If we compare Jefferson County to Wisconsin, we can see that there is a greater chance that if you're a first-time home buyer buying a home in Jefferson County, your housing costs are going to be more expensive than in other areas around Wisconsin. So if you're making between $20,000 and $34,000 a year, there's a 54% chance that you're going to be spending at least 30% of that income on housing in Jefferson, while in Wisconsin, there's a 50% chance. And we see this across many of the different income brackets, and Jefferson is always slightly more expensive than Wisconsin. And this concentration, so going back to this idea, we talked about Alice, and we talked about how the federal government classifies housing as affordable if it's less than 30%. So this is giving an idea of which households in Jefferson County are spending the most on housing, spending more than 30%. And we can see that, maybe unsurprisingly, that homes that are earning less than $35,000 a year are the ones that are spending the most on housing as a percentage of their income. And this gets back at the idea of this high price appreciation that we're seeing. And we're actually seeing, what's interesting is trend towards higher appreciation of the more affordable homes. So more attached housing has been increasing in price faster than detached single family homes in Jefferson County.
That's a big deal.
So part of the reason that,
Clayton, I can come up.
yes,
The mayor of Whitewater.
Watertown.
Watertown, who's partially my boss, asked for a question, and then we're gonna go way back. And then I don't mean to get people dizzy. Oh, they asked, okay, Fort Access, Jefferson, Lake Mills, Waterloo. I skipped through this slide way too fast. So Watertown, now let's take a step back. Lake Mills, 164 houses short.
Mhm.
Watertown, 661. Why is that? It's because this DOA has these projections of growth up in Watertown. It's a great location, been there. And the housing units are not growing fast enough. And this, by the way, is the Watertown we consider, it flips over two counties, right?
Right.
We're considering both. We're considering Watertown, not Watertown, Jefferson, as opposed to Watertown, Dodge.
Right.
Same thing with Whitewater. Whitewater exists in 3 counties. It too has a huge shortage of housing, of units. This is units, by the way. And so we have, I apologize, we skipped over this a little too fast. And so, and I'm going to say this before we finish, I want to make one statement. Everyone who's on this, the mayors, we have basically mini reports written for every community. And Clayton and I are happy to have a 20 to 30 minute WebEx with you individually to go over your individual slice of this. Because this is so deep and thick. I would suck the life out of you if we went into it through all 87 pages. And honestly, I'm from South Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Do I really care what's going on in Cudahy? No, I don't. And so do you really want to sit through an explanation of what's going on in Lake Mills if you're in Watertown? It's interesting, but you don't have time for it. I want to go towards the end. I'm going to try to pop way, way, way to the end. One of the most interesting slides. I have a lot of respect for my students because they do great stuff. This is really neat. Look at the orange. This is Jefferson. We had a structural shift to the right in the rental structure. That gap between okay, I'm gonna get rid of this. The gap between the 599, the orange, is like 81% in the 2010 to 2014 era. It diminished, and those units moved over to the higher rent areas. Why? Because people were demanding it. They said, I will pay to get that unit. And the person who was paying $800 said, I can't afford that. And this happened. Look at Fort Atkinson. Fort Atkinson, and I kind of have to criticize my guys because it's like, and women, because it's, can you put the purples and blues and oranges on the right, same side in every slide? And I'm getting dizzy here. But if you look at these slides, you can see that we're having this shift. Units that were less expensive are moving into more expensive. That's exacerbating the affordability problem because the new dwellers are bidding it up. And we can see that throughout the model. And so, as I said, you know, if Mo Hansen from Waterloo wants to meet with us, we're happy to set aside some time to have a WebEx to go through their individual numbers one to one. And I like that, Cameron. I like that. Sign me up. Yes, I like that. But you know, we do, you know, and I'm gonna finish because there's a lot of stuff here and we can go through it. We do great work. I do not want this sitting in a file cabinet somewhere gaining dust like the end of an Indiana Jones movie. You know, it needs to be examined and it needs to be used in conjunction with the work that you get from Vibecker or from Vanderwall or from R.A. Smith or these other groups that are doing great work for you. It's part of the process for making decisions in the future. So does anyone have any questions?
I have a comment, quick. So for the team online, this is Ben. And there's a reason why the county went ahead and did this. And the issue of housing at all levels, especially the workforce housing, but across the spectrum has come up since I've been here through various conversations and planning processes, including like our strategic plan, et cetera. And so I think as we went to our comprehensive plan that we just approved, this was an early leader of issues that came forward among all our communities, whether it was incorporated municipalities to some of our unincorporated and some that act like cities, like Exonia as an example. In really some of the challenges and opportunities that we have. And so when we looked at some of the implementation strategies, this is the reason why we went out to get more data, was to kind of look at how do we move this forward. And so our intent, pending some other discussions, is in our implementation of the comp plan is some focus points on housing. And so to the point, our goal is not to have this sit on a shelf. Our goal is to have a conversation with our partners, because obviously with the municipalities, you control the zoning and all those things, but help to work together to find solutions or opportunities to make this work. So just a quick little statement of why the county engaged with UW-Whitewater on this, because the challenges we see and the opportunities are there, but now we just got to find the data to take some action and move forward.
And I actually want to thank Vicky, because Vicky has the unique ability to play good cop and bad cop in the same phone conversation, because she would just beat us down and then compliment us in corresponding sentences, and she made it better. To be honest, this Alice data was her coming back and saying, use this, and then calling me up and saying, why didn't you use this? And then calling me up and saying, are you listening to me, Russ? You know, or do you just talk? And so what the point of this is if you have needs, state them. Don't be afraid to insult me. You're certainly not going to insult me. It isn't going to happen. I mean, if you say, can you clarify this issue? One of the most clarifying issues that keep going back to Cameron, that Clayton came to me with was we got into it yesterday that because of the poverty, people in the poverty threshold weren't included. I was like, are we overstating this? And he was like, no, we're understating it. And then he sat there and he explained the math to me. And he said, Russ, the problem is worse than we think it is. That's amazing. Oh, there we go. Oh, I think the problem is worse than reported. It is. But you know, my cautionary statement to the student who's getting a C is try to get a C plus. Don't try to get don't come to me and say I need an A. Let's start incrementally working towards improvement before we hit perfection. And so, yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, you need more units. It starts right there. How many more? I'm going to give you the number. More.
Russ, I wanted to interject here. We have Cameron has his hand raised. Cameron, did you have a question for the group?
Thank you, Mo. Yeah, no, not an urgent one, but I wanted to say first thank you to both Vicky as well as Ben and everyone else involved in this process, and Russ. Thank you very much for the information today. I'm wondering if this presentation, the slides, I know the report is coming out soon. Are these slides available somewhere? And my reason for asking is there's a bit of urgency, I feel, for Whitewater. We are at the crossroads of a great opportunity with the closure of our tax increment finance districts to extend the collection of increment for a year and take all those dollars that would come from increment and put them toward housing. And we have one particular property owner in our community who has opposed every route I've taken to try to improve housing in Whitewater. So any of this material that can be shared, I would love to take advantage of it and apply it to presentations I'll be making at the next couple council meetings.
And it is available. The county has ownership of it.
Yeah.
And by the way, we continue to tweak data. We continue to audit, re-audit. And so, and that's where I say we'll continue to make it available.
And we'll have it and we'll share it. That's again, because we did this study at the county level. So it is, it is available, and it will be available to share. I just want to go back to the point that Russ and Clayton were clarifying as it relates to the federal poverty levels as opposed to the ALICE levels and what that really means. So when Russ says, yeah, we need more, I'm not going to give you a number, but yeah, we need more. But more of what is the question that we were attempting to unpack and understand at a different level, and then understand it at the municipal level. So understand it for the county and then understand it at the municipal level, and which is why I kept going back and saying, but look at the ALICE data, look at the ALICE data. Because the ALICE data is dot on a map specific to the true costs of living, whereas federal poverty guidelines just look at income. So there's a huge disparity.
And I want to finish with one thing.
Yeah.
15 years ago, I was working with, and some of you have been around a little bit, knew Andy Lewis with the UW extension. I worked very closely with Andy, and Andy made a speech once. And he said, when did the word rent become a 4-letter word? It isn't about building single family houses necessarily. I didn't buy my first house. I make good money. I mean, I went to college, I got my PhD, my wife went to medical school. We've done very, very, very well. We didn't buy a house till we were 36. We rented. Rent is not a 4-letter word. And so it's about building units. It's about housing. And it's not necessarily building this homogeneous single family house. At 3 a.m, I woke up and I wanted to Google something. I looked up Levittown. In Levittown, the houses there were 700 square feet. Considered a little slice of heaven in 1952. Everyone wanted to move there. Today, we would never build that house. Times change, needs change, and demand changes. But we need to find product that people need and that they want, and serve that, and they can afford it. That was, by the way, I can tell you from this end. Vicki waved at me and said, "You have to say afford." I like that. But yes, so that I just wanted to make that comment about rent. That is not always about building single family houses.
I think Megan Hartwig has I think she was raising her. She's our executive director. No? Okay. I thought you raised your hand. Nope. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Russ. I wanted to take a moment. We've got some people who are joining us today specifically because our topic is housing. And I wanted to take a moment just to invite any comments from anyone participating on the call that they might want to direct towards Russ at this time. If there's a front of mind item that you'd like to ask, go ahead. Steve, go ahead.
I'm going to grab Derek DeOria into this if I can. Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just, this is to Russ and Clayton. Russ, I'm going to send you my contact information. I would like to talk to you before you publish this report. I think you are greatly underestimating the problem of available housing and the supply that's out there. I just sent a note out there. I just went to the MLS here, which is what the brokers use when they sell homes. I suspect it's where Clayton pulled his data from. And there's, as of February 25th, which admittedly is a point where there aren't as many houses on the market, there's about 3 weeks worth of inventory available right now. And there's a little bit of a trick to reading that. And I would love an opportunity to show you guys these tools so you can run this for yourselves before you publish that report.
The churn thing is a big issue. The time on market, the number of available. We do it on a rolling basis. So we try to build into the seasonality issue. But Steve, I actually agree with you. And if you can give some advice to my guys
Yeah.
and kick them.
I would love that. There's a couple tricks you really need to know. Like right now, I just ran this just so it was as current as possible. There are 2 houses in Fort Atkinson available for sale right now at this moment. That's it. And it's 190 home a year market. So I think this problem is worse than these numbers even suggest. And I'd love a chance to talk to your team about that.
That's why I like the quantity number more. But Steve, I appreciate that, and if we can work with you, it'd be great.
Great.
Derek,
I'll shoot you my contact information.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Is there actually there? Are you sleeping?
Yep. Thank you, Steve. Is it anyone else on this call? Just wanted to afford anyone an opportunity to raise a question here while we're all together.
Russ, this is Derek. Did you have a question?
Tina, what do you got?
This
Tina?
is Tina from the Watertown Health Foundation. And my question is there any way to get data on specific populations? So are we more in need of housing for seniors or young workforce housing or those with disabilities? Is there any way to get a little deeper or not?
We can bust out seniors. I'm not sure about disabilities or race. We can certainly, there's certainly you can look at income groups, you can look at race by community because we know the census data, but we can actually look at correlating the income of the elderly with the housing needs. And so we can do a little bit of that, but that's because, as I mentioned about my father, we have programs out there. And so we collect data.
So Derek did pop back up.
Yeah, I did have a question for Derek because I know Derek very well.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, this swings all the way back around to simply workforce development and job creation and the availability of workers. If you don't have people, and you'll see at the end of our report, we have a long discussion about people leaving Jefferson County to go to Dane County and people from other counties coming into Jefferson. There's kind of this conga dance that goes on in the morning here because of the housing price problems. But I mean, Derek, what do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And, great job to you and Vicky for putting this together. My interest was we're working right now with the city of Elkhorn, but I mean, honestly, all the communities in Walworth County are dealing with housing, like you said, first time homeowner or, affordable housing issues. And it definitely, as we try to attract new businesses, if you do that, but you don't have the housing, obviously you don't get, as much of a benefit, but it also impacts your school district, which impacts your, ability to retain and attract, residents. So it's a huge problem. And, I guess what we're trying to do is, gather the data. I think people know it, but, it's certainly helpful on that, but then also talk with some of the developers and builders and just figure out what type of incentives, if any, we can use to get some housing, some affordable housing going. But I see it as a huge problem going forward. And I think a lot of the communities they're understanding it, that it is a problem, but, really not knowing exactly what kind of resources might be available. And how do you motivate the builders? They're going to go where it's easiest. And for us right now, the senior housing is an easy one for them to do in Walworth County. So, they're focusing a lot of efforts there.
Thank you. Again, want to afford the opportunity. Anyone have any additional comments or questions for Russ?
There's one that just popped in here.
We do it. We do. Yeah, we actually have the vacancy rates for apartments. I'm not sure if we included in the report, Because if you, I mean, to be perfectly frank, it's kind of a churn issue.
It's a snapshot in time. It's really hard to capture.
It's yeah, I mean, it's whenever they did the ACS data, they asked what do you have vacancy, and we don't really have time on market for vacancy, but it does exist. Did I lose everyone? Oh,
But I would just jump in and recommend it. I mean, if that's a data point that you're looking for, that's, you know, a snapshot in time data point that you need, you can probably work with any one of the local realtors can give you a finger on that pulse to some degree. But again, as Russ said, I mean, that's a real churn market. So it's hard to, unless you've got good comps, year over year comps, you know, knowing what it is today is just knowing what it is today, right?
Yep,
So you'd
thank
really
you.
need year over year.
Yep. Wanted to recognize Megan Hartwig. Thank you for raising your hand. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to Steve's comment that the situation is probably even worse than we think. Just to point out that the Alice data from the latest report is also based on 2018 numbers. So I think it's important that we all kind of keep in mind too, the number of individuals and families who were probably on that threshold. So maybe just above Alice, but that have perhaps been knocked into that category given the financial implications of this past year. So we certainly at our United Way and a number of other organizations are fully anticipating that Alice number is going to be quite a bit higher for our areas over these next few years.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Anyone else? Let's kind of circle around, if it's okay, do a last call on questions for Russ or for the team. If not, Russ, I want to thank you very much. Yeah, you mentioned boots on the ground at least once or twice. There are many people on this call that represent the boots on the ground in our various communities. And thank you for putting this information forward, and we have our work cut out for us, and thanks to your work, we will do it better.
I'm gonna actually, can I answer the question?
Yes, go
They
ahead.
asked you about Zonia and Oakland, is we didn't do the townships.
Right.
We cut off at villages.
And, yeah.
And that, you know, it wasn't disrespectful, but it was, at some point you had to figure it out.
But Supervisor Renard, we'll have a conversation, see what we can pull, especially for those two communities, because they act differently than some of the other towns.
And we can.
Yeah.
Zonia, I mean, more is not, you know, once you set the model, once you have the template,
It's easy.
you
I
just-
should say it's easy. But
it's easy. So, okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
hey, Clayton, awesome job.
Yep.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. And thank you to all of those that joined us today, specifically for the report. I'm going to just move forward here on our agenda for today, upcoming meetings. Vicki, staff, are there any announcements regarding that?
Just the, you know, normal end of the month meeting in March. So other than that, yeah, we usually put the date on there, but as you know, this board meets every month, the fourth Thursday morning of the month. So I don't have the date off the top of my head, the March meeting, but anyway, you know when it is. and
Yep,
you've got-
understood. And for those that might have joined us for the housing study, please note that these meetings are structured to have, this organization is structured to have interspersed educational meetings. So keep attuned to upcoming future educational items such as we had today. Moving forward, I'll move to item 10. Is there a motion to adjourn today?
I move. Will.
Motion by Wilkie, is there a second? Let the record show that it was unanimous. Everyone said, seconded the motion to adjourn. I want to thank you again to our present presenters and to those that attended. And we will see you next time. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Congratulations again, Rebecca.
I need my little thingy.
Yes, if you can just, tweet that.